Have you ever wanted to create a plate wall but felt completely overwhelmed by where to start? Today, I'm taking you behind the scenes and showing you exactly how I created this blue and green plate wall above the bed in the guest room based on this Pinterest inspiration. I'm going to walk you through my planning process, how I arranged the plates, how I transferred the design to the wall, and a few things I learned along the way. Now, I want to be clear about something. This is not necessarily the right way to create a plate wall. It's simply my way. There are lots of methods out there, and I've used them all. You can trace every plate and make paper templates and put those up on the wall. You can use painter's tape and tape out a grid and measure every inch so that they're perfect and symmetrical. But for this wall, it was inspired by a plate wall that was more organic. So I really leaned into the let's see what happens kind of vibe for this. And I feel like it paid off. Now, like most decorating projects these days, this one started on Pinterest, social media, and I knew I wanted a plate wall above the bed, but I wasn't exactly sure at the beginning what shape I wanted or how large I wanted it to be. So I started collecting inspiration photos and saved them on Pinterest. And one image kept catching my attention. I loved how organic it felt. The plates weren't arranged in perfect rows. There wasn't rigid symmetry. Instead, it looked like a collection that had grown naturally over time, and that was exactly the feeling I wanted for this room. Now, when I use inspiration photos, I'm not trying to copy them exactly. I'm looking for clues like, what do I like about it? Is it the colors? Or do I like the shapes? Or the spacing? Or maybe it's the overall feeling of the design that I like. So once I figure out what it is, I try to pull those things to create something that feels like me. And that's what I did here. So once I had that design, I just moved to the next step, which was gathering the plates. Fortunately, that's not very difficult around here. If you followed me for any length of time, you know I have plenty of dishes to choose from. Because this room already had the green and blue color story, I wanted the plate wall to reinforce that palette. And this room has been dubbed the Blue Willow room. So, of course, it had to have Blue Willow. I started pulling pieces and just piled them up in the room. And I pulled some transferware in blue and I pulled some transferware in green. I pulled some Bordalo Pinheiro designs in green and some blue. Some of these plates are vintage, some of these plates are newer, some are antiques. What mattered most was how they worked together. And I just kept laying them out and pulling more and taking some back until I got a collection that was going to create the display that I wanted. One of the things you want to make sure you're doing is including variety. Include large plates, include small plates, platters, dinner plates, salads. You want some with scalloped edges. You want some with a deep color or a white background. You want some with a blue background or a green background. You want pattern pieces. You want some more subtle pieces that kind of step back. That variation of design is going to create your visual interest and it will keep your eye moving around your display. If every plate is the same size and color, you're going to create a more formal look, and that was not what I was going for in this room. Now, once I had my plate selected, it was time to figure out the space. I measured above the bed, that wall space, and I knew I wanted the plate wall to feel substantial enough to anchor the room. I wanted it to be the focal point when you walk in that room. And after I measured, I laid it out on the floor, and this became my design area. And I just started laying the plates out. I knew I wanted to start in that corner, so I started with the biggest platter that I had, the Blue Willow platter. And from there, I built up with a slow curve. And then at the bottom, I followed the curve of the bed. And working it out on the floor first, honestly, is one of my biggest tips. Even if you're going to measure exactly and space them out, or if you're going to be organic and just try as you go, I suggest working it out on the floor. I did change things, and that's okay, but it's so much easier to move things around on the floor instead of after you started hanging your plates. Now, I did switch some up because as I stepped back, I realized I needed a green here, or a blue there, or a different shape, or a different size. So don't be so rigid that your design on the floor has to be the one on the wall, because it will look different up there. Now, once you're laying out your design, this is kind of where the magic really starts to happen. And I started with that corner platter, and that was my anchor piece. And then from there, I would add some smaller bread and butters, and I kind of just kept trying things. Now, once I got that design out on the floor, I moved it to the bed so that I could have them close by as I was working. And that allowed me to kind of look and see what I had, mix and match, and change. And after placing that first platter, I just moved from there, and I kept looking for balance. Now, balance and symmetry are not the same thing. A display can feel balanced without it being identical from side to side. If you're not sure symmetry, you may have done an activity in elementary school where you put paint on one side of the paper and then folded it, and it transferred the symmetrical image on the other side. That's symmetry when it's identical from side to side. That was not the look I was going for, but you do want it balanced. You want the colors balanced, the shapes balanced. And to me, that meant making sure that there were Blue Willow plates spread throughout, or cabbage plates spread throughout, and the colors spread throughout. Now, sometimes a plate can look perfect close up, but completely wrong when you view it across the room. So step back after putting a few plates up and look at it, and move anything then as opposed to at the end. Remember, you're designing for how the room feels as a whole, not from up close. You want it to feel like it's part of the room and added to it. One thing I noticed while arranging the plates was the importance of visual weight. Now, colors have a weight. Now, that's not to say you could put them on your scale and weigh them. It's just a visual thing. Dark colors tend to feel heavier. Large plates feel heavier. Highly detailed patterns feel heavier. So when you're working on a design like this, you want to make sure that those elements are distributed throughout your design so that one side doesn't feel heavy or heavier than the other side. I also paid attention to repetition. I wanted to make sure that the green Bordalo Pinheiro appeared in several places throughout the wall, as well as the Blue Willow. I wanted it in multiple places, not just centered in one area or focused on one area. The Blue Willow also repeats throughout, as well as the green Transferware. That repetition created rhyme and rhythm. It helped the display feel cohesive, and it gave that balance. Another thing I love is mixing collections, so that's why I went with green Transferware, blue Transferware, Bordalo Pinheiro, new plates, old plates. And I feel like that's what makes this plate wall the most interesting. It really makes it look like it was collected over time. And it was, but some of the pieces are new to my collection and have been collected at about the same time because I needed them for this wall. But you'd never know. Now, once I was happy with the floor layout, it was time to start hanging. So what I did was I moved them to the bed. I did think about moving the bed so that I could do this without having to climb up and down and on and off and up and down. But Now, I definitely got my exercise in this day, climbing on and off the bed. I probably climbed on and off this bed at least 50 times during this project. By the end, I felt like I'd completed the decorating project and a workout at the same time. I started with the bottom left platter and worked upward and outward toward the right corner. And as each plate went up, I adjusted as needed. And you can see throughout the video that I try a few sometimes. Some plates ended up exactly where they were on the floor, others moved around, and that's completely normal. What works on the floor doesn't always translate perfectly to the wall. And the key is be willing to make adjustments. Remember, decorating is a process. Rarely does everything go exactly according to plan. Now, I spent a lot of time getting off the bed and looking from different angles to make sure that it was visually appealing from the doorway, from the end of the bed, from the opposite corner, from the side, and I would move things. And sometimes just shifting a plate just a smidge made the entire arrangement better. I didn't measure with a measuring tape. I tended to use my hand and just my eye to decide where it needed to go. Those little adjustments, don't rush the stage. Take your time, look, gauge. This doesn't have to be exact. So if you're not very good with measuring things exactly, this is the kind of plate wall for you. Don't rush the stage. Keep going. And as you move, you're going to want to think about where you're going to place plates. That's why I left the bed so that I knew where the curve went. It's why I left the side table with the lamp because I knew I wanted to go up and around the lamp. And I just kept going from there until the entire wall was filled with my blue and green plates. I did use some adhesive discs, but my favorite plate hook is by OK. And it's just a company that's been around for a while, and they're very sturdy. Most of them are spring-loaded, and they come in different sizes. So I used those, and they come with a little hook. Some of them, because of the size, I did have to use the adhesive discs. Now, I've heard horror stories, and I've heard of them falling. So I did add some Quake Hold, which is just a museum putty they use. And I added that to the back as well so that if the disc fails and the adhesive doesn't stand up or loses its adhesiveness over time, hopefully the museum putty will at least hold it until I can get it down and fix it. But the ook plate hangers are my favorite. Now, once I finished, I just loved it. I was thrilled with it. It made me so happy. I did add a couple of little bone plates that I did not originally have because I wanted kind of that fun little curve. And, it was just a lot of up and down. It took most of a day as opposed to the 16 minutes that this video is taking. And if you've stuck around this long, I am so impressed that you have made it this far. And if you're just skimming through, that's okay too, because that's what I do a lot of times. And I finished and put everything back and just fell in love with the look of this. Now, I absolutely love how the final plate wall turned out. It brings color and texture and personality and a sense of collection to this room. And it just works perfectly since this is the Blue Willow room. It feels personal. That's what I love about decorating with dishes. They're not just decorative objects. Many of them have stories attached to them. I love to think about what meals were served or who dined on the plate. To me, they're not just decorative objects. They have stories, and I love to think about those stories. A lot of these were estate sale finds. I've found at antique stores, eBay. You know, some of these I've had for years. Some of these I had for a day before they went up on my wall. Now they get to be enjoyed every single day instead of sitting down in my dish room. I walk past this room every day and see this wall, and it just makes me happy. If you've been thinking about creating a plate wall of your own, consider this your sign to do it. Start with what you have. Trust your eye. Be willing to experiment. And remember, perfection isn't the goal. Creating a home that tells your story is. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe, please. Please subscribe and let me know in the comments if you've created a plate wall, if you're thinking of one. Go ahead and share it on social media and tag me. And as always, from my home to yours, thanks for watching. Melissa.